Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest, George, and he's got a really interesting story. He's a self-made millionaire, and he's got this interesting ideas talking about. I'm really excited to bring guests such as George on the self, talking about the money struggle, how to get financially free, how to become financially independent. And just as a side note, none of the information here is financial advice, and there may be promotional products and services. So just keep that in mind. And with that, I'm happy to welcome George to the show. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Christopher.
Yeah. So kind of like I always love hearing individual story because that sets the ground for inspiration, motivation, and sets the groundwork for the conversation to ensue.
Yeah, my background has been sales and marketing my whole career. And as a sales guy, I wondered why people bought things and did they have enough money? And I always wondered, well, why do a lot of people not have enough money? And it was like, well, is there enough money out there? And of course, the answer was yes, there's an abundance of money. And then I started researching as to why people didn't have it. I realized that there's many millionaires out there and they all figured out how to do it and they gained the knowledge, but they didn't share the knowledge of so somebody could copy it because they were like, well, I don't want you to be my competitor. So I actually invented a whole new concept that changes the whole dynamics of that. And now it's opened up to anybody that really wants to change your financial picture, whether it's some of your clients as doctors or whatever. They could even do it with their children to help pass it on to their kids.
Yeah, and I've always wondered why people struggle so much in finances. And you're talking about, as money is scarce, but our government can print trillions of money at the touch of a button. So it's all about creating value. So one thing is talking about this. So you have this idea of the money struggle, and talk about what it is, why it's happening, why more people are getting further behind, why the rich are getting richer, and why our government is in so much debt.
Well, that's a great question. And what the core issue is, it happened, it started all with us between ages 2 and 10. We heard things like growing up when we were starting to build beliefs, we heard things like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't afford that, honey. Rich people are greedy. Money doesn't grow on trees, and the list goes on and on and on. And when you hear enough of that, your subconscious then forms a belief, and you will have that belief for the rest of your life until you replace the data, right? And so people can't get to the data because it's in their subconscious. The subconscious is there to protect you. So every time you try to build something or go get a lot of money, it just throws a wall up and self-sabotages you, even if you're driven and motivated and all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to do. That's what caused it. And people, it's the same reason people that win the lottery, within 5 years, they lose it all and go back down to that level that their belief system says what they're worth.
And talk about the influence of the school system. Why do we learn about like Pythagorean theorem and all these? I don't say that I don't call them useless, but they're not very practical. And when schools can be teaching us about like credit, debt, income, how to become an entrepreneur. Why don't schools teach this?
Because they don't know themselves. How many wealthy teachers do you know?
Very few. I'm
Yeah.
just
So they have the same
yeah.
subconscious belief that says, well, I get whatever they pay me and that's it. And they've been handed a criteria and said, teach the criteria. They're not the entrepreneur that says, oh, I need to teach you about money and how to make a lot and live a lot and
Mhm.
become wealthy and financially free, or have that world called financial freedom. Huh?
It's interesting because growing up in school, it was like, okay, so in order to be wealthy, you had to be a doctor, lawyer, you had to be a celebrity, athlete, all these things, and no mention was about business owner, no mention was about entrepreneur, creator, none of these things. These are just like, to become wealthy, you had to have a high paying job. The next question is, so you help people achieve financial freedom, and again, I know your thing is to help people become free in, the shortest amount of time with the least amount of struggle, the most efficiently possible, the most efficiently. So how did you develop this idea? What is this idea? And just as a caveat, this is not advice. We're just like, again, we're discussing concepts.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So, and this question is for every one of your listeners. But my first question is, have you personally ever found a penny laying on the ground and picked it up? You ever done that?
Well, the funny thing is, it's like a OCD trait of mine because I hate wasting things. So when I see something, to be honest to the audience, I pick up around $100 in loose change just laying around each year, and then I can invest that or whatever. But my wife kind of she harps on me. She's like, "Oh, that's cheap, or that's petty," But I'm like, "Hey, it's free money," But yeah, that's to answer your question. Yes.
Yes, I ask everybody, have you ever done it? Everybody says yes. My second question is, when you found that penny, did you ever turn it into $1 million?
Well, I wouldn't call it $1 million, but I do invest it in, very stable stocks, and
Yeah.
you can get a 10%, 20% return, if you take a little bit more risk, maybe double. But like I said, it's never $1 million, but
So here's the interesting part, and you
yeah.
can't argue with the math. It's all common sense. If you took that penny and doubled it to 2 cents and 4 and 8 and 16 and 32, and you just doubled it 28 times, it equals $1,342,177.28. Can't argue with the math, right? So that's phase one of common sense, okay? But here's the real question. If you had taken that penny and doubled it 28 times and made $1.3 million in change, to do it over again, would it be harder or easier to do it? What would you say?
So
Yeah,
very easy.
have the knowledge what works, right? So the only thing now that I learned that's keeping people from not having any money to becoming financially free is the knowledge, correct? If they had the knowledge of what to do that worked, they could just copy it and go do it, right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
So what we did, we created a system, and this is really wild. So when you find your penny, you log into your system and you say, "Here's how I found my penny." And went da 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 enter, right? You can do that, correct?
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you do that, then the magic kicks in, because here's what my system does. When you add an answer to that system, you become part of a community where everybody's helping everybody. And as a thank you, then the software opens up and would show you all the answers from everybody else ahead of you. Now they completed the step you're about to start. So you get to see all these answers of success of how other people did it. So you have the knowledge of what worked, and you just pick one, copy it, and go copy that. And it's kind of like if I said, if you double a penny 10 times in 30 days, to get to a whopping $5.12, which anybody can do, right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
That then rescripts that subconscious mind we talked about, and it doesn't rescript the data about money, but what it does, it creates a new path that says, "Oh, you can double your money at any time because you just did it 10 times in a row." So we have a 30-day free course that people can do that. But then every time you double, if you got that $5.12, could you go to a yard sale this weekend, find something that you could sell for 10 and offer them 5? Of course, right? And then you buy it at 5, sell for 10, you log in and say, "Here's how I did it in my system," enter. Now you get to see all the answers from everybody ahead of you, how they took $10 and went to 20, and then 20 to 40, and you just keep following that pattern, and you practice the skills of learning what the market will pay for something. And
Yeah.
once you understand that, somebody will always sell you something less than market value. So it's a wide open world. You just follow the process we created all the way up to 28 steps. And then if you really want to get fancy, go to 29 and double 1.3 to 2.6.
Yeah.
And you're doing this part-time on the side, totally passively, not even affecting your day job if that's what you want. So it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Really, really interesting.
Does that make sense? Does it, there's nothing on the market like it today, where people are helping people in a community. And let's say you have, one of your doctors or lawyers or somebody, they could even do this with their children to teach them. Because if it took them 4 years to do it, they could become financially free before they graduate from high school.
Yeah.
It's a gift a parent can pass on. So pretty cool.
Interesting. So, and the next question I have is, how did you develop this idea, and how old were you when you first started thinking about this? Just
Well, my first business I had was age 7. And I'm a lot older than you, but back then they were just inventing, I grew up in a family of 10 kids. So we didn't have a lot of stuff. My dad said, if you want to buy something, go get a job, right? And so what I did at age 7, I came up with this really creative idea that if I took a penny, and it's funny, my first business ever did start with a penny, and here I'm at the end of my career with the penny business. But I would take a penny and lay it on the railroad tracks, and if I lined it up just right, the train would come over, flatten it to the size of a quarter. And vending machines then were so new, they could use that flattened penny as a quarter in the vending machines. And I would go sell those pennies for 15 cents at school. And that's how I was making money.
Yeah. Interesting thing is, a penny back then was probably worth more than it is now.
So you could buy candy for 5 cents.
Yeah. Movies were like, I think movie tickets were like, right, like 10 cents. And then like popcorn was like 2 cents or something. It was like, like freaking popcorn's like $30. And it's like, you could.
They didn't have inflation back then. It wasn't invented back then.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So kind of your system is intriguing because it promises to simplify financial growth. And so explain how you managed to simplify complex financial principles into user-friendly processes that anybody can follow.
Well, if you think about capitalism is just like the yard sale. It's understanding what the market will pay. And if you look at all the millionaires, they developed a knowledge in their specific field. Like your doctors, they have to go get a lot of knowledge, right? And people get paid more for working with their brain than they do with their hands. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the knowledge is the core differential that people go for MBAs. And I go, why do you, my initials in my company is MBG. So I now say, why do you need an MBA when you could get an MBG for much less? It's teaching capitalism of understanding what the market will pay for something. And then once you know it, then going out and making bids for less. Things like, eBay, they become a billion-dollar company with the same concept, or Etsy or Amazon or any of these vendors. We're just now passing on the knowledge, and they can use those tools to leverage for their own wealth.
So you're essentially a knowledge broker, and you're basically you're kind of
we're actually a membership of mentors, because I'm not even given the knowledge. The knowledge is coming from the people that already have done it and have the success and proof that they could do it. And then somebody could say, well, I could just go copy it in my system. They can even text onto their comments, and they might even reply back and carry on a private blog to say, well, how'd you do that, Christopher? What if I did this and this and this? And people wonder, they say, well, what happens when you get into bigger numbers? How do you do it? Well, it's not as scary, because if you're going from 40,000 to 80,000, you may buy 4 expensive cars and sell them, and only make a small amount on each one. And then when you finally, it may take you 4 or 5 cars to do that. And then you log in and say, well, it took 5 cars, and here's I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or a car and a condo and this, whatever. But what you're learning is, again, what the market will pay for something, using the doubling a penny as the model to keep honing your skills.
Yeah, I love that. Really fascinating. Really, like this kind of this concept financially. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, because I've talked to millionaires, I talked to decamillionaires, centimillionaires, and they say that it gets easier the higher you go financially, but most people think it gets harder to go higher.
Sure.
In this concept.
It's like when you start to run, it's hard to get started running, but once you get up to speed or driving, once you get up to speed, you can do it. And I had a millionaire tell me, Laura Langemeyer, and I'm happy to always use her name, But she said there was only one common ingredient, believe it or not, in all the startup businesses of how they broke through to get their first million. I said, just one thing? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, would you mind sharing it? And she said, sure. And she said, these wise words, she told me, she said, if it's not your genius, it's not your job.
Oh,
She said, if you're the salesperson and you don't have money, go get with somebody that has a lot of money that has no idea. If you're not the accountant, go team up and bring on your team an accountant that's their passion and their genius. And they would build a team of people, even they would barter their time to get a piece of the company. But
yeah.
all of them broke through their first million by surrounding themselves with people that had the genius, that was their genius.
It's really because Napoleon Hill talks about what you're just this mastermind and basically this creation of value and
Yep.
knowledge and value transference and profiting from it, of course, but it's like really interesting because like your first 100,000, like when I made my first 100,000, it was really hard, but then the next 100,000 it was really easy. The first million was hard. The next is like
And answer that easier then. How would you answer that question?
I actually, when I look back on it, it's like kind of like you have that confidence and your subconscious knows you've already done it, so it's already assumed that you can do it again.
You had the knowledge and a new belief that you could do it.
Yeah.
And that's
And,
exactly what my system plants in people's brains
uh-huh.
is the experience of success, 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 success. And they finally go, their brain goes, I can do this. Yeah.
You're like it clicks, right? It's just like click,
Yeah. My model is going where you've been, as we say.
It's almost like running a marathon because like the first marathon, like you struggle, but then the next one is like easier because you've done it and it's like easier. It's like it's kind of this success begets
Yep.
success.
Yeah. And what's funny is I tell people that, when you get into the bigger numbers of my model of doubling,
Yeah.
let's say you're going from 640,000 to 1.3 million. People go, well, that's hard, right? I go, no, not. That's just your mental virus still kicking in
Yeah.
because you may buy 4 houses and, we tell people exactly what to do and do it totally on the side. And, it may take you 5. Who cares?
Yeah.
You can do it in 2, 3, or 4 years, just part-time on your own.
Yeah.
We like to tell people you can do this program and make $1.3 million in 2 to 4 years part-time, and you can't use your own money because it's free money laying on the ground that an investor put there. 20 people walked by and your subconscious said, that's for me. And that was the free money that they said, here, start your business. The only thing nobody told you is, well, how do you do it? And now my model says, here's how you do it when you find that penny.
Yeah. The other interesting thing is, for that, let's say, you're talking about big numbers here, let's say 10 million or, 20 million, these numbers. What's interesting is like people are like, I can't do that because they're thinking they have to work for that, they have to like trade their time and to make, 20 million a year, you're going to really struggle unless you find like capital or, partnership or leverage or, some way to make that deal. So, but, people are just thinking, oh, I gotta find a job that pays me 20 million versus like create 100 millions of value, you take 20% of that. So,
Well, and it's expertise is building passive income. I mean,
yeah,
even with our model, we have an affiliate program that builds passive income for people just for helping other people get involved in it. And it's creating, letting your money grow and trade your time for money to do the work. And
yeah,
that's creates your momentum, like you said, in your marathon. That
yeah,
gives you the endurance to run a hard time instead of running a marathon as a sprint.
yeah. How can people find out more about you?
Well, it's easy way to remember it is millionairesbygeorge.com.
Yeah, I love that.
I want to build millionaires and we have a membership fee. It's a very small amount to it. And if they go to the website, it's not about the money. It's my give back to society. Is if somebody even can't afford it, we'll give them a free 6 months trial and say, if you do the action, we'll give you another free 6 months. It's not about the money. It's about the mindset.
Yeah.
They spelled action wrong in the dictionary. They spell it ACTION. That's so wrong. Because if you just take the I in the middle of it, you
Uh-huh.
pick it up and move it to the front, It now changes the dynamics and says, I act on.
Interesting.
If somebody can take the knowledge that we offer, and they can act on it, they can change your life financially.
Yeah, really interesting. And for all the audience out there, let's thank George for coming on and just talking about, these abundance, how to shift your mental framework from scarcity to abundance using these concepts and ideas, which is really interesting. Be sure to follow all of his social media and give him a like and follow, and check out his website as well. And with that, thanks so much for coming on.
Great. Thanks for having me.